What's up, broadcasters? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Branding Banter, your promotional products podcast where you can get all the nerdy news you need to know about. My name is Jeff Franklin, National Accounts Manager with Headwear USA.
And I'm Meg Erber, and I don't really know what to call myself yet, so we're just going to say I'm a Mainer from away.
Well, it's not April 1st, not April 1st, not
Yeah.
April Fool's Day anymore,
Yep.
and it's still Meg Erber. So now we've cleared the water, right?
Yes. I was
Cleared the air.
disappointed that more people didn't say, is this an April Fool's joke? So on my post, but it's fine. Those were my people.
All right. And Sarah, who are you?
I'm Sarah Goshgarian Unruh. I actually have a new title.
Oh.
I am the Strategic Partnership Manager with a focus on Fulfill Engine and promo. So, that's a mouthful. So we're just going to call it Strategic Partnership Manager. How's that? So
should we get the young one to try to say that one now?
Right? I know. Yeah. That's what I always kid people. I'm like, titles are just words, right? So they don't necessarily define anything. So.
All right. So 2 things for the audience. Anybody that's listening, watching, whatever, if you missed last week's episode, go do yourself a favor and watch at least the first 2 minutes and the last 2 minutes.
In the last 2 minutes.
Yeah. First 2 minutes, last 2 minutes.
No, the whole episode's good, but clearly the kids stole it.
Yeah. They're replacing us for sure.
No doubt. Yeah. So that was a good one. And then also last week, which we didn't even mention, we had the new intro and outro finally on the episode. So let us know what you guys think of the new photos and all that good stuff. And if you saw yourself in any of them, be sure to post that down as well. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, today we're going to talk. I mean, it is it's April 11th, but taxes are right around the corner. But Sarah, you are fresh back from Capitol Hill. You went to PPAI's L.E.A.D, which, for those that don't know, that acronym in our industry, since we love our acronyms, is Legislative Education and Action Day. And it's something that it's basically the litigation or lobbying side of PPAI, where basically we come together as a whole association. People, representatives from every different state, comes as part of the regional community, sponsored and put on by PPAI, to go advocate for whatever issues our industry is facing. So, Sarah, I don't know if we're going to talk, obviously, L.E.A.D, and then we're going to get into some tariff stuff as well, I think, just because it's a pretty relative topic of discussion the last few days. But yeah, so Sarah, why don't you first give us a rundown of your first experience at L.E.A.D and sort of what you thought?
Yeah, so this was my first time attending L.E.A.D, and I have to be honest, I was really nervous about it going in because I just didn't have, I had asked both Jeff and Meg, who had attended in years past, off screen, give me all kind of the inside details, because when you're first getting into anything, even though I've been in the industry for a number of years, this was new for me. And so I wasn't sure what to expect. And I wasn't sure what these meetings look like. We actually, this year, I think is different than in years past. They actually had a lobby firm that was there to assist us as well. So each person had a lobbyist that was included inside of our groups that helped us get from building to building, because I heard in years past that was something that a lot of people got lost as to where to go on Capitol Hill, because all your meetings aren't in one location. So
you've got the House buildings on one side of the Senate of the Capitol building, then you've got your Senate buildings on the other side. So there's crisscrossing and going up and down the street and trying to find which building you're in, whether you're in Russell or Hart or whatever other one you might be in.
All the hallways, everything else. So if we didn't have somebody, I could only imagine of how lost that we would have been, because irregardless of, we've had so from Texas representing Stephen Myers, Dana Porter from Sage, Jared Thorndike from Sage, and then Joseph Summers from Whitestone were in my group. And so a pretty diversified group, if you think about, manufacturer side of things to technology service provider to a distributor, and then a supplier / manufacturer as well for me. So we were really diversified within our group of who we met with. A lot of different House of Representatives we met with. And then, so the initiatives, and then we met with one senator. So we had one senator meeting. The initiatives this year for L.E.A.D were, of course, tariffs. That was one of the things that we talked about. So I just want to give myself a little pat on the back that that's what made the changes happen on Wednesday. I'm just kidding. Was our charge to the Hill and having the conversation
Yeah.
with the House of Representatives and the senator in regards to tariffs, and they listened. Just kidding. But
So how was
you know,
everything received? Because I know, in years past when I had gone, things weren't so politically charged as they have been over the last
yeah.
couple of years. I mean, I went last year, but ended up getting sick with a migraine. So how were the conversations? How well were they received? Was there any kickback? Like, what were you hearing?
There was no kickback. It was interesting, and you could tell from the different House of Representatives. And I will tell you, I kind of like think level set from an experience standpoint, because again, I wasn't sure what to expect. So there were two House of Representative meetings that we actually met with the representative themselves, and the other meetings that we met with their staffers. In a lot of cases, we had hallway meetings. And so it's amazing of how much business is conducted in the hallways. And I will tell you, for somebody who has a daughter who's the same age as what the staffers were, or in some cases the staffers were a little younger, it's
Oh,
kind of,
wow.
it was surprising, right? That this is who you're having this meeting with, that you're trying to drive your point home, key points home at these initiatives, and hoping that then they're communicating it back directly to that representative. But they all are on different committees. And so there are different points that you try to make sure that you drive home, because as a chair of that specific committee, very similar to how we run our regional associations. We have committee members. And so if you're with membership, you pay more attention to things that impact the members. If you're on social, you pay more attention. So very similar, right? To that they're on different committees. And so we tried to make sure that we were hitting points that we knew were maybe like top of mind based upon their committees. And so there were, and then here's the other thing from an experience standpoint. So people aren't so shy about joining in. PPAI does a phenomenal job as to the pre-work in order for you to feel like that you know
everything.
know the things, the points that they're trying to communicate, or we as an industry are trying to communicate throughout every meeting. And then our group did a great job. It wasn't you just by yourself. And that we all kind of like ping ponged the topics. So we kind of all had a topic that we brought kind of I guess hit home a little bit more for each of us, and that we could articulate and communicate on. So we didn't feel like we had to be like the master of every topic. We could really be like the master of one point, key initiatives, to ensure that we hit all the points and that we were able to, have that meeting quick and concise. Because a lot of these were like 15-minute meetings at most. So we were lucky that we didn't have anybody who was like 2 minutes and like they were done. So I would say each meeting is about 15 minutes that we had. So you had to be concise and to your points and just start the conversation, and then off you run. So that I feel like that'll wrap up experience side. The other thing is make sure you have comfortable shoes on. So, because we didn't do, even though our meetings were in buildings that were next to each other, we did have one meeting, to Jeff's point, that was across the Senate. So you walk all the way across in the Capitol. And so making sure you have comfortable shoes on is always a good thing. So, but I think experience wise, I think is that good experience? And then we can talk about the different topics that we talked about.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk about the different topics as well. But so aside from the staffers being so young, were you also shocked at how much they have to remember to correlate that information to the representative? Because were you shocked at like how many people were actually lobbying on Capitol Hill and how many meetings they go through in a day?
Yes, it was, we got a sneak peek, right? Like, and their offices are so small. That was the other thing too. I mean, you have like 3 or 4 people that are working in probably like the size of like my office in my house here, just like each in little corners. Like we met a student who was there doing an internship from UT. So he had been there for 3 months, and there was about 48 students. So they actually take classes while they're out there as well, he had said. But It reminded me of a desk that you had whenever you were in high school, maybe, and then a chair. Like he was like, "Oh, excuse me, I have to get back to my chair," and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I couldn't imagine working in that environment, but that's the reality of it. They have like 3 or 4 staffers working in these really tiny offices, and yeah, that was interesting.
It is.
The other
All
thing I
right,
think,
and then of course, I'm sure
sorry.
the comfy shoes didn't hurt when you were walking over the apple blossoms as well, right?
I have to
Right.
tell you, that was one of the things that I was so disappointed about. Like, they had peaked, like, the week before we went out there, and a lot of
Yeah.
times people say they stay around, but they had this storm that came in with, like, wicked winds and everything. There were literally no cherry blossoms at all on the tree.
Oh,
None. Nothing at all. Like,
no. Oh,
Brandon had posted a picture on Facebook. If you haven't seen it, like, go out and see his, like, Facebook post. They're gorgeous. They were non-existent. You would have
yeah.
never even thought that those trees existed when we were there. Like that I was super sad. But this would have been the first, I think, time that LEAD has been this early in the year. Typically it is like in May. And so usually a lot of people miss the cherry blossoms in the first place. So this was like
Yep.
an opportunity. There was a chance. So if you
Yeah.
will,
Oh,
we
speaking of
didn't see
storms,
them.
you guys got some storms in DC. I, on the other hand, got the same storm, but a little bit colder
I can't
and got
believe
8
this.
inches of
Oh.
snow instead.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
8 inches is what you got.
8 inches. And I was like, oh, it's spring. Oh, look, it's going to snow this afternoon. We'll get a couple flurries. And then as I was leaving to go to Portland to pick up Kaylee, it started like flurrying. I was like, oh. I had just taken
Wow.
the Adirondack chairs out, and those things are like 100 pounds each. And they're so big, they literally you need 2 people to get them out. But I'm like, I got this, And I was like, ah. And then the snow, so high. So yeah, so I'm sorry that you missed the cherry blossoms because
I know, so
I've never
sad.
seen them either. I've always missed them, but it's on my
Yeah,
bucket list.
I've
I
seen
didn't
them
realize
once, I
that.
think, maybe
Okay.
twice.
There's some pink trees that were around, or like white trees too, that were in bloom, but they're not cherry blossoms. And so there's a lot of like misconceptions of like, but when like the pictures that Brandon posted, like you can
Oh
tell
yeah,
that they're cherry blossoms, like they're gorgeous. So next year, maybe it'll align. I will say I probably would go back and do it again. So if
Very
the
cool.
timing aligns, I would definitely go back, and then I feel a little more confident walking in. During the first meeting, when somebody threw a point to me, I was like, "Oh, like I'm talking now." Like, okay, here we go. Because it's just not, you just don't practice it all the time. It's not part of your normal talk track. So, so good transition for what our talking points actually were. So one of them
Yep.
is that we supported the Modern Worker Empowerment Act. That's been around, I think, for a number of years. It's really just clarification on what independent contractors are. Because for those of you who don't know, our industry is made up of 98.2% of small businesses, and a lot of people utilize independent contractors. And it's not only like, the teacher who needs to supplement their income, but also like, your grandparents who have retired and that they're looking for additional work. And so supplement and then a lot of companies from our industry perspective, which is why multi-lines come into play, they can't support your full-time workers and paying all those benefits. And so that's what we needed clarification on. The Modern Worker Empowerment Act is what that's called. So that was one. The other acts that were trade agreements, one was AGOA. AGOA is I have notes down here just so everybody knows, cheating a little bit right now, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. And so Africa and Sanmar has done a phenomenal job. There's a great video. I think it's on Sanmar's site to go see, but they've actually moved some of their production over to Africa. And so there's 9 different they're not countries.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Territories?
territories. Thank you.
Something.
I don't know.
Inside. And so it supports the workers over there, which not only then bring jobs over there and help with production over inside of Africa, which is another country that we can move things away from China from a production standpoint, but it also employs people back in the US. But it employs about 77% of women from a worker standpoint too. And so that act is due to expire in September. And so one of our senator that we met with, that is one of the initiatives that they're looking to transition to once tax season and tariffs kind of die down in June, is to bring that up within the scope of what they're talking about, because that they agree that needs to get passed again. And so that's the AGOA Act. And then GSP trade agreement is another one that actually has been expired since 2020. So we need for it to actually get renewed. It's the Generalized System of Preferences. It's a U.S. trade program that we've been advocating for it for a number of years, but it facilitates supply chain diversification and it promotes economic development by enabling eliminating duties, on thousands of products imported from designated countries. So it's like from 115,000 different countries. And so,
Wow.
yeah, or places, destinations. So, yeah. So the lapse of it has cost the American companies over $3.5 billion in extra taxes. So we would like for that to get passed again, because as you know, with the tariffs, we're already paying extra taxes. And so this would eliminate some of those additional taxes that we have been paying for. But the big one, I will say, aside from tariffs that we talked about, was the SWAG Act. The SWAG Act is actually tons of our distributors. They do business with federal, state, and local government agencies to help educate in forms of like public safety programs, health initiatives. If you think about recruiting from the Army, Navy, any of those industries. That's not the word I was going to say. Entities. Thank you.
Okay.
It's coming. But they utilize promotional products a lot of times in order to get their messaging across. And we know that promotional products have a 66% more of an impact from a longevity with marketing dollars than what other forms of advertising do, in which they might have a 15% impact or 10%, like your broadcasting or a lot of like your text messaging. And so if the SWAG Act passed, then that would eliminate those dollars, the federal government to be able to utilize the spend on promotional products. And so we are against actually passing the SWAG Act. So then that way, those billions of dollars with those federal agencies and contracts that a lot of our distributors have, that doesn't get eliminated. So that was a big piece that we needed to make sure that we were opposing the SWAG Act. It actually just got passed in the UK. So we want to make sure that it does not get passed here in the US. So that was probably, I would say, one of the most significant, not that, to diminish any of the others, but
that's definitely
we were trying to say, like, when you hear SWAG Act that's been brought up, we are opposed to it. And these are the reasons why. We talked about the value behind the promotional products and what they are. A lot of times they didn't know, which was interesting. I guess if you think about it, we live in this world, right? They don't necessarily. So just to educate on what a promotional product is, of everything from your t-shirt to your pen to your hat, backpacks, all of the items to their
I should have wore hats.
Awards, challenge coins, everything it is that they had inside of their offices. So it was nice when we would walk in, you could actually pinpoint what promo items existed, and to be able to say, like, all of those pieces, like, you wouldn't be able to utilize your dollars towards those items. And so that was
it kind of makes you wonder a little bit. Now I've lost my train of thought, darn it. Where PPAI gets the topics for, because usually they stay very middle of the lane, like they don't get very political one way or the other. They choose topics to go to Capitol Hill on that aren't necessarily going to upset certain parties. But the GSP one in particular, I was interested in last year because that doesn't benefit everybody in our industry. I mean, there's a lot of suppliers that import from China, and the additional duties or tariffs on other countries actually help people because of the tariffs on China. And since we touched on the tariffs a little bit, I think that's where we should go next, real fast. Is just that the fact that adding the additional tariffs on China is one thing, but the fact that a lot of manufacturers over the last couple of years have started to look elsewhere. They've gone to Vietnam, they've gone to Bangladesh, they've gone to Honduras, they've gone to these other countries. So when Trump put the tariffs on all these other countries, it kind of again helped those that are importing from China. It really did send the signal of America first. Because if you're going to order from outside of America, you're going to pay a little bit extra to import it. It is what it is. But now that he's sort of walked that back, which I think was part of the plan to begin with, to really more so hurt China. It's a little bit rough. It can be a little bit rough for people that are importing from China, for sure. So, what are your guys' thoughts on everything that happened this week, tariff wise?
So here's the thing. I have been painting for a week straight. I look at my hair and I'm like, there's paint in my hair. So the last thing I saw was a post in the Facebook group. And there was a post, and then there was a graphic, right? And the graphic essentially had, well, I think it was the initial, right? It was before things had been, negotiated and gone back and forth. But I think it's a good representation to show, like, okay, this is what we're paying, and then now this is what we're actually charging people. So I've been in a hole since then. So that's it. That's all I know. And that's the last update that I have. So I am here to learn from y'all on this one. It was eye-opening.
So have you not heard about the 125% that was then tacked on to China, or not tacked on, but it was upped to 125?
Well, no, but I did just plug it into Chat GPT, and it did say that, and I'm like, that can't be right.
No, that's right.
Oh, that's right. No, it was it was somewhere around 50% or something, like, or 30. I don't know. I can't remember what it was before that all this happened, but basically China retaliated and added
I saw that.
like 34% or something.
Yeah.
So ultimately Trump gave them a deadline and said, if you don't remove the retaliatory tariffs, I'm going to boost it to 104%. And so at midnight, on Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day it was, basically they didn't remove the retaliatory tariff. So we went to 104%. And then like 6 hours later, he bumped it to 125%, like all on the same day.
Yeah.
So a lot.
I think this is
And then on that same day, he also reduced all the other retaliatory tariffs that were 40, 50, 60% on some of these other countries, all down to 10%. So yeah.
Interesting. See how
fun stuff.
It's interesting. There was a webinar that Jimline put on yesterday that I got to hop on to, like, the last 10 minutes of it, and it was really informative. And I think that's the best thing, is that you educate yourself, right? And realize that a lot of the tariffs, even too, that like they were talking about, and this is why even a lot of suppliers, a lot of what I've seen, most everybody is holding their price until like June or July, because people prepared for what could be happening. And so they did have a lot of inventory that they went ahead and pre-ordered, and that's warehoused and everything else that's not impacted by the tariffs yet. And I think that also then gives time for this to play out. I think I saw like something that Trump had said of like, he's like, be cool, right? Like everyone, like, don't panic, basically, like, which I get. And we all tend to panic. People do, especially whenever it's topics that they just don't understand and just don't know.
And they people in their ear.
Yes. So I think the message from most suppliers that I've heard right now, there's not an instant change from a pricing perspective. They're great from an inventory standpoint, but there are some that I know are quoted, if they're doing direct overseas business, that's probably where they feel the most impact from a custom product standpoint right now. That they're all trying to navigate through and figure out, but I think patience is going to be the name of the game right now.
Yeah.
And educate yourself.
Yeah.
It's been tough over the last couple of days, though, as an importer from China. Being able to quote people. I mean, we went and we are communicating. We're over communicating probably. in regards
That's
to
what you
what's
do.
happening and how we're doing, through everything that's happening. And essentially, we've gone from, I believe, like a 30-day, holding the quote kind of deal to a 14-day, and then to a we're not holding them at all. Like they have to be confirmed on the day that the PO is submitted.
Oh,
Once
wow.
it's confirmed, then we hold that price.
Yeah.
Which I think is fair because
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. With it
like
changing.
you just saw, I mean,
Yeah.
we could take a 50% hit if things escalate. We could
Yeah.
take 100% hit if things escalate to that level. But we're not going to pass it on to the customer. I think that's the fair and reasonable thing to do. It's rough if things go really bad. But what do you think the end game is, real quick, before we wrap up? I mean, are we going to see like 300-400% tariffs, or are we going to see an embargo? Because they've both kind of said they're in it to the death. So who's going to die?
No, this is going to be really interesting. And I don't think we haven't really ever seen this play out like this, right? So I think even, my parents, right, and their generation, they're all kind of like, all right, what are we doing? So I don't know.
Well, yeah.
I don't have an answer to that question.
Yeah, me either. But
All right. Well, be sure to
Maybe I'm
comment.
just going to go buy the grills and like all of the things that like I was
just
going
got
to
a
wait till
smoker.
later to go and
Oh,
buy now.
yes, Sarah. Did you buy a car?
I did buy a car. Yeah.
Oh,
I bought the
Yeah.
car.
you're
So
like,
car
Did you
is
get it before
got,
the
that
tariffs?
purchase is done. So yeah. But like that's funny that the gentleman that was on the gym line talk, he was like, I probably made just a bunch of like purchases of items that like, I was planning on making later, and I just went ahead and made them now because I know that they're going to be potentially $100 to $200 plus more with the
Mm.
taxes, and so might as well buy them now. So
I have so many things I have to buy for the store, and I'm just
there you
thinking,
go.
they're just sitting in
Buy
my
now.
cart. They've just been sitting in my cart, and I'm just like, I'm spending money. I hate to spend money.
Yeah,
No.
that's true. All right, guys. Well, hopefully the episode was informative. Sarah, thank you for participating
Yeah.
in Lead and for bringing
That's
that news
great.
back to us. Definitely good to have you there. And hey, who knows? Maybe Meg and I will both be there next year.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
As well.
I think
Yes,
so.
that'd be phenomenal.
So.
All right, guys. Well, good luck. Be cool, as President Trump would say,
There you
and
go.
let's weather this storm together. All right.
Let's do
Until
it.
next time. Take care.
Bye.